Hey everyone, for those of you who don't know me, my name is Elaiza Benitez. I'll talk more about myself in a few minutes. So as Mana said, I am going to talk and demonstrate AI Builder forms processing. It's really cool. So I worked with the product team who's based out in Paris in providing feedback and doing some testing. So what you're seeing today is improvements that have been made as of the May release, last month. Before we get started, I want to make sure that everyone is engaging and communicating on Twitter today. I've done some posts. I can see that Jiva, Manu, Geetha, Elaine, and Ange, they've all been jumping on Twitter, so make sure you do so as well. I'm happy for you to tag me as well on Twitter and on LinkedIn, and make sure you use the official hashtag, which is down here on the screen below in bold. So I am a Microsoft MVP. I'm based out in New Zealand in the capital city called Wellington. So if we have a look over here, so that's where I am. I used to live and work in Melbourne in Australia for 6.5 years. So I actually worked with Elaine Yu, who is also one of the presenters today in the user group. So she's doing her talk next on Power of Virtual Agents. But for those of you who don't know, I'm actually Filipino. Magandang hapon to all my Filipinos who are tuning in today from the Philippines. Hello. So I was actually born and raised in the United Arab Emirates, and somewhere along the way, we made our way to New Zealand. So yeah, that's about me. Okay, so in terms of the agenda, here's what you can expect. I'm briefly going to talk about what AI Builder is all about. I'm going to talk about the idea. I'm going to talk about the use case so that you all can relate to it. And then I'm going to talk about the solution before we jump straight into the demo. And then I'll talk about my final thoughts on AI Builder. So what is AI Builder? It's essentially a cool way of doing more cool things in the Power Platform. So there are different models, as you can see from this screenshot. And the one that I'm going to be going through today is form processing. So form processing basically allows you to upload forms, and you can create and train an AI model so that any other forms that you upload into the model, it will recognize that text in that form, and then it can generate that text as an output so that you can retrieve those values and push them out to another data source or even an application. So today I will be using SharePoint as the platform where they're going to upload the file. And then for the target source of where that data is going to get stored will be what we call the Common Data Service, also known as CDS. So this idea came about because all of the demos that I had seen last year, so this was towards the end of the year, were all on, let's say, invoices or tax receipts. And that's cool, but I wanted to see whether it would actually work with a real life form. So a real form that exists that businesses use. So I wanted to put it to the test. Is AI Builder suitable for a real life form? So the idea came from what we do today in New Zealand. So this screenshot is from one of the amazing TV shows from the past called Flight of the Conchords. So it's these two Kiwi comedians based down in New York City. If you don't know that show, go ahead and watch it. But basically, over here in New Zealand, whenever a new employee starts with a new employer, they need to submit and complete what we call a tax declaration form. Now, a tax declaration form here in New Zealand looks like this. So an employee, so this applies to anyone over here. It doesn't matter if you work at McDonald's, if you work as a plumber, or if you work in the corporate world like I do. This is a form that we have to fill and provide to our employers. So today, this can be completed in two ways. The first way is printing this form off, handwriting your details on the form, and then scanning it and then emailing it to your new employer. The other way is you can actually, so this is a PDF on the government website, you can actually click into the form and type in your details, save that file, and then send it digitally to your employer as well. And so the employer, the person who's receiving it at their end, then would traditionally look at this form and enter that data into their HR and payroll system. So I wanted to see, can we actually transform this entire process digitally using AI Builder form processing? And that's what I'm going to be sharing with you today. So in terms of the solution, I did touch briefly about it earlier. So the first process is that the text declaration form, dry throat, will be uploaded into your private SharePoint site. And at that point, a flow in Power Automate is going to be triggered. And so what will happen is that the AI predict will kick in, and it's going to scan that form, it's going to detect that data, and then it's going to create a new contact record, and then we're also going to have a link to that SharePoint file. And then if there is any other user who doesn't have access to that SharePoint site, they're going to get a permissions error, because the whole point of the solution is to show you how it would work in the real world. Okay, so let's get ready to demo. Who's with me? Okay, I don't hear anyone speaking, so I'm just going to jump into it. All right.
All of us, Elaiza, for sure.
They're all waiting for you.
Yeah.
Woo! Okay, so here I am in Power Automate, and to get to AI Builder, on the left, there's a few options. So there's this one called AI Builder. Click on it, and then you'll see that it will expand, and there will be two options presented to you. The first one is Build, which is what I'll take you through. So we're going to build our model first, and then if you need to go back to that model, you would see your list of models in this option. So I'm going to select Form Processing, and we're going to create a new AI model. And it immediately tells you that at minimum, you need at least 5 documents with the same layout. So when I was doing testing earlier this year and working with the team, I actually tested with 30 forms. Yes, I went through that effort of going through and creating forms. So I'm going to choose a selection from those 30 forms. All right, so we'll upload them, and I'll show you what it's like to build your model. So I'm going to pick 5. So let's go with Malcolm, Shannon, Sean. Malcolm, Shannon, Sean. Let's go with Roosevelt, and I've got to pick a Filipino surname. Let's go with Ramos and click Open. Okay, so now it will show us that our 5 documents have been selected, and immediately you can see that 3 of them are the ones that I talked about where, you know how I said there's 2 ways of completing a form. One way is handwriting and scanning them. So this is like a faint image of that scan, whereas this one is the one where I've typed directly into the form and saved it. So you'll see that next. So right now what's happening is that the AI model is now uploading and downloading those documents on their side. So now when I click close, the next bit that we're prompted to do as part of the process is select the form fields. And so if we select one of the forms and we click on Analyze, it's going to analyze all of those documents. And once it's done, it's going to load a new window where it's going to show us the form that it has scanned, and then we can proceed with selecting the fields on the form. When we select those fields on the form, this is where it will allow the model to understand where it needs to detect the data from on the form. So behind the scenes, there's a lot of smarts going on behind this. So for those of you who are familiar with OCR, this is what the form processing model is based on. So let's just give it a few minutes.
Can you sing a song meanwhile?
Sing a song? I may be Filipino, but I'm not good at singing. I know we love a karaoke, but I can't do that. Okay, so now it's saying that we need to select our field so that it can detect it. So in here, it will give you like quick instructions. So if you're doing this for the first time, it's really easy to follow. Okay, so I'm gonna just zoom in so you can see it a bit more clear on your side. Okay, so this is what the form looks like, and it's picked up some fields correctly. So you see these little outline of dots or ants, whatever you want to call them. That's basically AI Builder going, hey, I think this is a field. So if I select Malcolm, there we go, it's gonna also pull through that field label. Pretty cool, right? So now when I hit select, it's going to automatically recognize that this field belongs to this field label. And then if I select another field that is detected, it will also do the same thing. But for these other fields, it's not really correct. So what I can do is I can actually outline the fields. So you see how it is now picked up the numbers, the integer values. So now I can give this a name. So if I put an IRD number, which is the text number, by the way, over here in New Zealand, and I select it, I have now told the model that, hey, this is a field and this is what you need to detect. And with the text code, it's correctly done that, but you can see that the label is not quite correct. So I'm going to correct it. And then we can also do the date. Okay, so those are our 5 main fields on this form. And so the next thing that we need to do is train the model 4 times more, because at minimum we had to upload 5. So I'm going to quickly do that. So right off the bat, you'll see that it has automatically recognized the fields already based on the first one that we had used. And all the other ones that I need to select so that it can detect it going forward is just the IRD number and the signed date. So if I outline the field, we could see that it will now list the other 2 that have not been detected. So if I now select IRD number, that will then show, and then likewise with the date. So I can either drag an outline like I just showed you, or I can select the option draw and document, and it will automatically link it to that signed date. So as you can see, it's pretty flexible in terms of how you want to interact with the form processing model when you need to train it so that it can detect the fields going forward. So I'm just going to quickly run through all of these. Cool. So now we've got 2 more. So this is one of the handwritten ones that I mentioned earlier. So in this one, it didn't pick up the signed date. And we'll do one more. But you get the hang of it, right? It's pretty much outline, and therefore the AI form processing model will know where to detect those fields on the form. Cool. So now I can select done, and then we can have a look at the forms. So if I want to upload more documents, I can. So now when I click next, it'll tell me here are the fields that you have outlined. And so that when I then get triggered, these are the fields that I need to look for. And from these fields, this is the values that I need to pull the data from. So now when I hit train, this will now train the AI Builder model, and then we can start using it. And then the final thing that we want to do is publish it. So right now it's being trained, and you can see that I've created previous models in the past. So while I'm here, I'll talk about how you can get started with AI Builder. It's free as of today, and so all you need to do is come to AI Builder in your Power Automate or your Power Apps maker site, and it'll prompt you with, hey, do you want to try AI Builder for free as a trial? And then you just click a button and then you're pretty much sorted. When your trial ends, it will tell you that it has ended, but you can continue to renew it. So if you want to use it for demos, you could do that. And if you want to jump in and learn about AI Builder, you could do that today. The only thing that you need is a tenant. So if you want to register for a trial with Office 365, you could do that as well. Cool. So now it's trained. And so now if we open up that AI Builder model, we can hit publish. So roughly 5 to 7 minutes is all you need to get a model up and running. And then if it is being used in Power Automate or Power Apps, it will be listed over here. Okay, so that's going to publish. So what I'll do now is head over to my flow in Power Automate. So this is what my flow looks like. So as I mentioned, there's going to be a SharePoint site where the HR person is going to upload a file into. So this is where they have received the file from a new employee, and then this flow will get triggered. So my trigger is when a file is created in a folder. So I'm pointing it to the particular SharePoint site, and I'm also pointing it to a folder in that SharePoint site. And the next thing that we're going to do is use the CDS predict action. So this action is the one that will allow you to select the AI Builder model that you've just created. So here's one that I've already prepared. And if I did refresh this web page, then we would see the one that we had just created. So I'm going to select a model that I've already used. And then it's going to prompt you to let it know what the document type is. So this is important. If you are using different document types, then you essentially can create different models or reference them in here. I haven't tried it yet in terms of trying it against multiple document types. I've only tried it with a PDF, but it works fine. And then this bit here is the document. So this would be what we call a base 64 value. So this is grabbing that file based on the PDF that we would have uploaded into that SharePoint folder. Okay, so for those of you who are paying attention, did anyone take a look at the actual signed date values that were uploaded? So I'll just demonstrate by just picking a random form so that I can show you again. So right now I'm just performing a quick test, and then it should show me the outputs that it has detected based on those 5 fields that I've outlined and trained it on. So if we have a look at this signed date, we can see that it correctly picked up the integer values, right? But if you take a closer look, there's actually spaces between the date values, as well as this date value is not going to work with systems or applications. Why is that? Okay, let me tell you. It's because of this format. This format that you're seeing right here is what we call a UTC format. It is pretty much the universal format that all systems and applications use. So if I were to just upload it just as is, it's going to fail. And that's because something like the Common Data Service or SharePoint or even Flow won't recognize it because it's not in a UTC format. So we have to do some tidying up. So the first thing that I'm doing in this compose action is I'm getting rid of those spaces. And so I'm referencing the field in the predict action. So this is what it'll look like. So I'm basically calling this field and saying, hey, remove all of these spaces. And then after it has done that, that's where I'm going to format that signed date. So basically, we need it to be in this format. So from that value, I'm using what we call a substring expression or function, sorry, where I'm saying grab the last 4 values to form the year, and then grab the first 2 values to form the month, sorry, no, it's the middle one, and then grab the first two values to form the day values. So it's essentially this. This is what we are doing in here so that it will be accepted by the Common Data Service. Okay, so then the next thing that we need to do is convert the time zone. So the reason why I'm doing this is because when we use the Common Data Service, it's pretty smart where it will show the end user the UTC time in their time zone. And in their time zone, it's going to be based on that same format, but just in their time zone, if that makes sense. So if we were to put in the time value as is, it would be in UTC, but if that end user is in a different time zone to UTC, which of course they will be because no one really is in UTC time zone, it's going to look a bit funky to them. So this is where we have to do some transformation to make sure that it's going to look normal to them and not in the UTC time zone, if that makes sense. I hope it does. And then, so the next thing that we're doing is, remember how I said in my PowerPoint that we are going to generate a link to that file, and so that if anyone needs to review that file, they could do so. So this is what we're doing in this step. We're pretty much saying grab the file ID, so the details of the file, so that we could create that hyperlink so that it makes it easier. Because when we do design, as April said, we want to think about the end user experience and we want to make sure everything is as smooth as possible for them. So this solution incorporates that whole design experience. Okay, and then the final thing is creating the contact record. So these values that you're seeing, again, I'm pulling it from that predict action. So this is a run history of another flow. So we could see things like the signed date, we could see things like the IRD value. So if I keep going, this is where we can reference the family name. So that's what I'm doing in this field of the CDS action where we're creating a new contact record, and same with first name. And then as we scroll further down, we'll see that I'm referencing that signed date output, and I'm saying that yes, they have signed. And then I should have another field for the IRD number. So again, I'm doing a replace function to remove the spaces. So as you can see, there's spaces again in here. So one tip from me is whenever you're working with a forms processing model, review the actual values that it has detected. And if there's some tidying up that you need to do, then make sure you do that as part of your flow. Okay, so now I'm going to demonstrate the whole process end to end. So we're going to head over to this folder called IRD forms, and then I'm going to upload a file. So let me select someone like, who have I not done already? Okay, let's try Simon. Okay, so what's happening now is that this file is being uploaded and my flow should be triggered. So let's give it a few seconds. No, I need someone to say open sesame. Oh, there we go. It worked. Okay, cool. Here we go. So right now it's just doing its thing. It's going to get to the predict action where it's going to scan and analyze that form. And then it's going to pull through the date values and it's going to tidy them up. And then right now it's creating that SharePoint file link, and then it's creating a new contact record in CES. So let's head over to my model-driven app and let's take a look and see if that contact has been created. Oops. So this is what a model-driven app looks like in CDS or in Dynamics 365. So we can see that the contact has correctly been created. And so let's take a look at the contact. Let's take a look at Simon. So we can see that it's pulled through the first name and last name correctly. And if we scroll down to the bottom, we could see that it's pulled through the IRD number. It's tidied it up by removing the blank spaces. It's recognized the tax code. We can now see the date in my time zone, so not in UTC time zone, so that's all good. And then this is that SharePoint URL that I was talking about. So if I go ahead and click on that link, it will automatically bring up that SharePoint file. So this is if I was someone in HR and I do have the permissions. If I wasn't in HR and we replicate that same walkthrough with another user who doesn't have the permissions for that SharePoint site, what they're going to see is an error that they can't access that file. And that's because they're not part of the HR and payroll team. So that's pretty much the end-to-end solution that I wanted to share. So there's a few considerations that I do want to share with you. So I'll go back to the model and I'll upload another file. And let's pick Maureen Ramos. And if you are using scanned forms, so in other words, you've printed it out, you've written it on the form, and you scan it and you use it with AI Builder, it can be a bit tricky at times if the quality of the scan isn't that great. And this scan isn't that great, as you can see, because it's really grainy. So it can make it a bit hard for the AI Builder to correctly detect the information. And that's why I said when you do scan forms and you upload them and you're going through your testing, make sure you closely look at the values that are recognized. So you'll see here, because of the poor quality of the scan, it's picked up the dividers where you're meant to separate the two values for the date and the month. So it's kind of recognized this strike as a 1 when it really isn't. And then it somehow picked up a dot. So you see how there's 0.20 that shouldn't be there. So in those scenarios, if it doesn't look right, then that's where I would put something like a check condition to alert someone so that they can actually review that file, hence the link to that SharePoint URL. The other thing that I also want to make you guys aware of is the other material that's available today. So if I just share with you all this AI Builder 2020 Wave 1 updates, it has a lot of information on there, as well as links to learning material. It's really good. I recommend it. And as you scroll down, as I said, there's a lot of information. There's somewhere in here where it actually provides a link to the calculator tool, which is this one. So that calculator tool looks like this. So if you ever need to work with a customer and you're trying to get a gauge of how much it would be, put in the number of forms, and if there's any other AI Builder models that you're going to use, you can enter in that data in here, and so that can help you do that calculation. Okay, so back to my slide. So I already talked about these 2 points. Let me just switch this around. I also have a YouTube video on what I just showed you, but it's just smashed down to be less than 3 minutes. So if you ever wanted to show something to your customers, feel free to use this video and be like, there's this person all the way in New Zealand who's actually doing this as a use case. So check it out. Yeah, I don't really have anything else to say, and I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please make sure you do fill in the surveys for Geetha and Mano, because this will help them understand areas that they need to improve on, as well as any future topics. And yeah, thank you. Follow me on LinkedIn, connect with me. Please make sure that you leave a comment so I know that you found me through here. You can also follow me on Twitter. And you can also subscribe to my YouTube channel, which I forgot to show you. So let's head back over to my browser. So this is my YouTube channel. And like I mentioned, I do have a video on the AI Builder, and I also have a WTF playlist. So as Mano said, WTF stands for What the Flow. So that playlist is designed to help you understand Flow more in the context if you're moving from Dynamics 365 to the Common Data Service. So it just teaches you a whole bunch of things in there. So yeah, subscribe and check it out. And yeah, thanks for having me, Mano and Geetha. And thank you again for everyone for taking time to join us on a Saturday. I've really enjoyed the content so far, and I'm looking forward to the rest of our presenters. So Elaine is next, so make sure you stay tuned because she's going to tell you stuff about Power Virtual Agents.